Tourist is an electronic producer who makes outsider progressive house music. I have recently stumbled upon his work through the fantastic electronic guru himself, Josh with a $, who is always finding the excellent electronic albums that perfectly cater towards me, and then on this channel I gush over them. And this, in case you hadn't worked out, is another one of those albums. We have Tourist's Inside Out, his 4th album. The guy is from the UK. Sadly, I can't say I've heard anything prior to this album, but of course, now that I know about this one, I'm going to have to check out his previous 3 albums from this, because this is literally his 4th one. I'm sure there's greatness to be found there as well, but this album here particularly is a really blissful house album. It doesn't do too many things that you could consider very flashy or technically wow. It just does it so simple and so effectively, and I just love it for what it is. You know, the starry-eyed emoji? Well, the opening track is exactly that. It just really, it just wows you immediately. It really takes you under its wing and just takes you through the skies, and you're just gliding, and it's so effervescent and just beautiful and blissful. There's no cloud in sight, and you're just gliding, and everything is just so perfectly blue, and everything is just so peaceful. I love this so much. And he manages to take this really beautiful atmospheric approach across the whole album. The album just has a really soft tone to it, and it's so delicate. Of course, it breaks out into some uns beats occasionally, but for the most part, it just really softens the mood for you, and it's just so lovely. The fluid vocal sample of Your Love is really catchy and really memorable as well. It actually reminds me of something Caribou would do, and I think he has a song called Our Love, so I'm sort of wondering if there's some kind of crossover there with my brain connecting these 2 songs. But I think instrumentally and the way he uses the vocals is something Caribou would do. Can't forget that most recent Caribou album as well. There were some bangers on there, and the driving, kicking beat comes through on this track just like it did on many of the tracks from that album too. This track here is easily a highlight for me. Avalanche just takes that relaxation, peaceful feel from the opening track and extends it even further to the point where you are just mesmerized by this one. I really love this one. This has got to be the best track on the whole thing. It actually has a bit of a Ross from Friends feel to it as well, which is an artist that dropped a fantastic album last year, and considering how close geographically, I guess you could say they are, you know, it's a UK house producers that we're talking about here. I do wonder if there's some crossover in influence. I mean, I would not be surprised at all, but this track right here is excellent. Lovely springy details to the production, and that like, it just really gets stuck in your head. And yeah, it's such a great one. The vocal samples that, you know, come through quite clearly on tracks like Your Love continue throughout the album, with a track like With You as well. The repeated refrain on this one is actually really endearing. There's a nice endearing quality to how it's being said and how it fits into the really lovely instrumental. It's very simple, but again, just very effective, and that's what this album is really good at doing. We Thought We Were Sleeping is another great one too. I feel like this gives you the same feeling, or it gives me the same feeling, as something Porter Robinson would have done on his Nurture album. They're not exactly like, you know, there's not like parallels between the way they sound, but it's the way they make you feel. There was a specific sort of just like tone to that Porter Robinson album that just made you feel like youthful, and just everything was gonna be okay. That kind of weird feeling that it gave you, and I feel like this track really brings back that similar feeling as well, while also being paired with that odd existentialism that also was permeating through that Porter album. Kind of permeates through this one as well. There's always like something like creeping up on you, as if like you can't quite figure out what's about to come, but it's always there lurking. It's quite an odd effect that this album gives, because it's very peaceful, but at the same time you're sort of waiting for something to jump around the corner and ruin it. It's a very odd feeling. I can't quite describe it. Like there's this sadness lingering amongst it all. There's this presence to the album that almost feels too good to be true. It's a very odd feeling, but again, I feel like both Porter and Tourist can capture that kind of sensation really well. Moving on from there though, I think Lark is a really good track as well, the highlight for the second half of the album. You've got that kind of quartet feeling to it, particularly the 16 Oceans album that I thought was really, really good and a bit underrated in his discography actually. But it had that like nice springtime feel to it, and although we are entering the summertime, I still feel like this track particularly gives that similar sensation to what Fortet was doing on that album, because that was a very springtime feeling album. And then closing out with Eternal, which just shimmers so beautifully and effortlessly. It is a really gorgeous closing track for this album, and is an earned ending as well. Like, it had to end on the most beautiful sounding song, and it also starts with the most beautiful sounding song. It is just a really effective album that does exactly what it's supposed to do and gives you those feelings in the exact kind of way, and most importantly, it's just really great house music. It might not sweep you off your feet and absolutely shock you and make you feel like you're listening to something you've never heard before. I'm not going to go as far as saying that, but for what it is and for what it does it so superbly that I cannot say no to it. And at the very least, it will at least keep you more captivated and invested than the most recent Drake album. 8 out of 10 from me. I think it's an easy 8, honestly, and is one of my favorite albums of the year so far. So a great album to have discovered here. Hopefully you guys will check it out based on my recommendation. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already either. Would love to see that, and goodbye.